Hey everyone, it's Nathan here from Nathan Harrington Coaching. Today I am thrilled to share with you 5 actionable steps to conquering your overwhelm in the moment. We all know the feeling of being swamped, doing so much yet feeling like nothing is getting done. Whether you're a leader or someone who is interested in achieving big goals, the 5 steps I'm going to teach you in this episode will help you immediately regain clarity, focus, and an overall sense of empowerment. When we get overwhelmed, it can often feel like the last thing we want to do is to stop and get organized. But these steps I'm going to show you are concrete instructions for how to follow the advice of slowing down to speed up. These steps are particularly useful if you feel like you're doing a lot but not actually making any progress on anything, or have this nagging sense that you're forgetting something. Now, some of these steps here are just really good time management practices, and you might already know them. But when we get overwhelmed, we often stop doing the things that we know will work and that we know will empower us. So what you're going to hear might be a way of returning yourself to what you know works for you. For others of you, it might introduce whole new ways of operating. The key here, whether these are new techniques for you or not, is that knowing the steps is different from doing them. And doing all 5 steps, as they're described here, is what will make the difference. I remember a couple of months ago, I was organizing a big networking event right in the middle of a really busy month for me that was filled with other workshops and coaching sessions and lots of to-dos. And I was so overwhelmed and stressed, and the closer we got to the networking event, the more anxious I got, and quite frankly, I started to become something of a tyrant with the other folks that I was working with. But these steps transformed my experience from one of chaos to clarity and even excitement, and allowed me to get into action on the most important items, as well as to show up as my best self for the folks that I was working with. So get out a pen and paper. You're gonna want to write these down. Here are the 5 steps for conquering overwhelm. Step 1, set a timer for 11 minutes. There's no magic to this number. I just like that it's kind of a random number, and so for me that makes it more memorable. And 11 minutes is enough time to make some significant progress, but short enough that it doesn't feel daunting and overwhelming. Next, step 2, take a look at your calendar for the upcoming 5 weeks. Starting 5 weeks out and working your way back to today. Spend about 20 seconds simply looking at each week, absorbing what you have coming up. It's just a simple scan. Now look, if you want, you can jot down any major events or deadlines or commitments, but the most important part of this step is that you get a bird's eye view of your time and get a sense of what's coming up, whether you write anything down or not. Sometimes just doing this step can begin to shift your experience. When we're able to see the reality of our future commitments in black and white, it can start to immediately settle our minds in a way. You might see that you actually have more time and space coming up than you realize. You might see that you have other commitments that you hadn't thought about that you need to be working on too. Either way, what we're looking for here is the power that comes from knowing the truth and the reality of your situation and the future that you're living into right now in the present. Step 3, do a brain dump. Write down every action item you can think of. It can be related to what you have on your calendar that's coming up, or simply open to-do items that you've got floating around in your head. This step is about getting it all out of your head and onto paper, lightening up your cognitive load. Think of this as a wide-ranging open to-do list. Now, this isn't going to be the to-do list that you're going to work from, but it will make a difference if you are as specific as possible and as far-reaching as possible. Again, what you're going for here is alleviating cognitive clutter and reducing that feeling of overwhelm. Step 4. This is where you start to think about getting into action right now, okay? So from your brain dump, pick 5 items that you can realistically tackle within the next 5 hours. Again, nothing magical about those numbers. I just like that they're easy to remember and they're manageable chunks of time and manageable numbers of tasks. Include a mix of easy wins as well as tasks that you've been avoiding. The easy wins will build some momentum, while tackling the tough ones will cause you to push through procrastination, resistance, or even fear. That second type of action can be really useful and can embolden you to take even more impactful and decisive actions. Now, there's a step 4.5 in here, we'll say. For those tasks that you've been avoiding, you may be able to get yourself to take those actions just by naming them and committing to them, kind of like ripping off a Band-Aid. For some of them though, you might need to take a moment of mindfulness and self-reflection to see if there's a story you've been telling yourself about the task or any negative emotion that you could simply set aside. Often the emotional centers of our brains, including the amygdala and the hypothalamus, get triggered when we're overwhelmed, making it hard to access our rational thinking brain. By recognizing and setting aside these emotions and the stories that we're telling ourselves, you can free up mental space to then take effective action. Look, when we have a lot on our plates, it's usually because we are up to big things. There are goals and projects that we take on that require us to stretch and grow and show up in ways that we've never had to before. This can trigger old feelings of fear and stories from the past about not being good enough or smart enough. So when you notice that certain tasks, certain actions are driving up higher levels of resistance, take a moment to see what opportunity there is for you to break through old patterns and old mindsets and show up as your best self. Think about how you can elevate your perspective and take your experience of being empowered from a 2 all the way to a 10. The 5th and final step, create time blocks for each of those 5 tasks that you identified. Schedule them for the immediate future, as in within the next 5 hours, as I mentioned. Again, like the 11-minute timer, that's kind of an arbitrary number. It's big enough to get things done, but small enough so that you don't give yourself too much wiggle room for procrastination. When you are creating the time blocks, use specific language in the subject line of the calendar occasion to distinguish the outcomes you want to produce for each task. For example, instead of just saying, prepare for Friday's meeting, break it down into type out the agenda for Friday's meeting, finish the slide deck, and send text messages to confirm everyone's attendance. All of those things that are a part of preparing for the meeting, but they actually break down what needs to happen on the court to prepare. Using language that creates clear and specific outcomes will make tasks feel more manageable and achievable, and that type of language registers with and activates the part of your brain that is responsible for planning and execution. Those 5 steps will definitely get you to a clearer place where you can think more effectively and impactfully. If you still have any lingering sense of overwhelm, you can go back to your open list and pick 5 more items and repeat the process. If you feel good, you can continue executing or zoom out and start to do more strategic planning that can prevent you from getting overwhelmed in the future. Okay, to wrap up, I hope that learning these steps leaves you feeling inspired, maybe a little relieved, and most importantly, empowered. Write these steps on a Post-it note and place them somewhere that you'll see them. And I'd love to hear from you ways that you have conquered overwhelm in the comments below. Remember, the combination of these steps can shift your experience from stress and worry to clarity and empowerment in an instant. So the next time you're feeling overwhelmed, use that feeling as a reminder to stop, take a deep breath, set a timer for 11 minutes, and complete the rest of these steps. This is an opportunity for you to call forth your biggest, most powerful self. If you want to get more content like this to support you in your leadership and personal development, be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you get notified whenever I release a new episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great day.